Alright, here's my 2000 Toyota 4Runner that I've owned for 3 years and supercharged 2 years ago. This video is mostly going to be about the mods I've made to get more power out of it. If you want to see other videos of it on the dyno, at the track, burnouts, whatever, I have a whole bunch more on my channel, so subscribe there and you can see all those. So first we'll start off with the basic rundown of what I've done here for those that haven't seen my other videos. Start off with the big obvious one, this TRD, you can barely see it, but TRD Supercharger. It's a first generation model, it's the gray one. The second generation is the black one. The difference between the first gen and second gen is mostly the second gen is a one-piece housing. As you can see on this one, the supercharger actually bolts up to the plenum. In the second gen, it's all one piece, which, you know, it's just personal preference. This one, I found this one for 300 bucks on eBay, so I didn't complain. The other big modification I've made for a couple of years now are the Thorley headers, which you can see there and down there. Headers are good for 10 to 15 horsepower on an NA motor and roughly 15 to 20 horsepower on a supercharged motor like mine. Now those are basically the mods I ran the truck with for the past 2 years, just the supercharger, stock pulley, and the headers. The other mod that y'all will notice if y'all watch my old videos is I'm running the stock intake versus the cold air intake I used to have. And that was actually done on the dyno. I found I picked up 5 to 10 horsepower by going back to the stock intake from the cold air intake. And I did remove the elbow that goes up in here, but besides that, bone stock intake, no deck plate mod, nothing. So that's an interesting little tidbit I did not expect. And the other performance mod I've done to keep everything working properly with the supercharger is a URD 7th Injector Kit, which you can see there is the control box, and the actual injector is mounted on the back side of the supercharger and what would be the EGR port right there. And that's how it's pretty much run for the past 2 years, and it's ran fine. I've beat the living heck out of it. No issues whatsoever. So then about a week ago I decided to pull the water methanol injection kit from that car because it won't need it anymore. And if you want to hear more about that car, subscribe to my channel. It's going to be having a whole bunch more information about that car coming up in the next month or two. And I moved it over to this truck. For those of you that don't understand what a water methanol injection kit does, it basically breaks down to two things. The first part is it will greatly reduce your intake air temperature, which obviously increases power because it's a denser air charge. It reduces your EGT so it's safer on the engine, and it also increases the resistance to knock, which also increases power and makes it safer on the engine. The other part it does is it increases the octane level of your gas, so you can run pump gas and get race gas level performance out of it and running more boost, more timing, and the cooler intake charges also allow for more power. So all around, it's basically a way to get race gas style performance in a much cheaper and only as needed use. As an example of how much power you can gain by installing one of these kits, when it was still installed on my MR2, I gained over 20 horsepower just by turning the kit on the MR2 there. That was on the dyno, turned it off, lost 20 horsepower, turned it on, 20 horsepower. No extra boost, no nothing. Once it was tuned, I gained an extra 30 horsepower at the same boost level. And that was just with extra timing and little tuning modifications. So that goes to show you what kind of power increases it was. And I think a lot of that power increase was due to the much cooler intake charges. I would see temps of 20 to 30 degrees below ambient temperature, which is a massive reduction in intake temperature. That drop in intake temperature is, I'm sure, what most of that power gain was about. So that's what I was looking for in this. Since it's non-intercooled with the supercharger, the drop in intake temperature should greatly improve the performance. And so far I've seen exactly that. The inlet here, where it actually goes in, this will actually get cold, and I've actually seen it mist up with condensation. It's got so cold. So that just goes to show how much heat it's removing from the air charge. All that heat removed equals more power, more timing, and already I've been able to zero out my timing map, which I was having to remove timing whenever I was just running pump gas. I can now remove all that, so I'm now running the stock timing map even with the boost, and with the smaller pulley I'm running now. So that goes to show you how effective it is. So I think it's pretty obvious that the water and methanol injection works very well. So now I'll get into the actual AEM kit. Now as a whole, I think the AEM kit is a decent kit. It's by no means a top of the line kit. For the price though, it's acceptable. The biggest complaint I have about it is actually the controller. It claims to be progressive, but it is nothing close to progressive. It pretty much turns on almost full blast, and then it progressively goes up the last very little bit, but it jumps to, you know, 50 to 75% of the duty cycle right off the bat, making the progressive side of it pretty much pointless. So that's my biggest complaint. If they'd fix that, it'd be a great kit. There are other kits out there, Devil's Own and several Snow, are several other kits that make good progressive kits that actually work the way they're designed. A top of the line kit would definitely be an Aquamist if you want to go all out. They are bar none the best methanol injection kit on the market. And if I had the money, I would get it, but it's twice the price of an AEM. Is it worth it? Yes. Do I have that much money? No. So basically, as the AEM goes, it's a good bargain for the price. I do think Devil's Owner Snow would make a better bargain for the price, though. This I bought several years ago, and that's just how I'm using it. So we'll actually work backwards into the kit. First, I've got the nozzle mounted here. I'm running a 7 gallon per minute nozzle. Technically, that's a little big for a motor of this size, a 3.4 liter. They would recommend something like a 5 gallon per minute. But I had this one on the other car. Actually, I had this and a 14 gallon per minute on the other car, so I had a whole lot on there. But on this one, I decided to just go ahead and use it and try it. First off, I tried pure water, and it worked good. It basically gave me gains, but then it was bogging slightly, so it was pretty much evened out. So then I started adding methanol. Eventually, I went up to 100% methanol. The tuning on 100% methanol was a little harder, just because the piggyback I have just pretty much couldn't remove enough fuel to make it work. So I ended up cutting it back down, and I ended up settling on a 50-50 mix of 50% distilled water and 50% pure methanol. You could use washer fluid. I personally don't, because I can get methanol for $2 a gallon, so I see no point in doing that. I'd rather mix it myself and know it's right every time. In a pinch, I'd have absolutely no problem using washer fluid if I was traveling or whatever, because it would still work just fine. Now, with the current setup I have, the 450cc nozzle working with a 50-50 mix on the 3.4 liter motor, it is removing roughly about 1 AFR point. So if I have it actually tuned for about a 12.8 to 13 AFR, and the methanol turning on kicks it down to where I want it at about 11.8 to 12. They would actually want you to run about a 0.5 AFR difference, so a smaller nozzle, roughly 350cc for this type of motor. So that's what they would want. It works fine for me. I'm perfectly happy with it. I'm willing to tune that extra bit, and I'm also willing to make sure that I never run out, because if I do run out, I will be lean enough that it could cause a problem. That's a risk everyone will have to evaluate for themselves. Now, personally, I'm fine with it because I've got the low level sensor set up to where I've got plenty of methanol and water to get home, and I'm always going to keep a gallon with me, so I should never run out. And as I said, I can always use washer fluid should I absolutely have to. So that's not a real problem for me. Up to y'all if y'all want to actually do that. So now to actually get into the methanol kit. So we have the 450cc or 7 gallon per minute nozzle here. This is not the AEM nozzle. This is actually a Devil's Own nozzle. I recommend them highly over the AEM nozzle due to their much finer mist, and overall I just like them much better. For the price, well worth it. Now we go back to the check valve. Now the check valve you want mounted as close to the nozzle as possible. This will ensure that you don't have to pressurize the whole line before the nozzle before it'll build pressure. This will ensure a much quicker entrance into the airflow. Now if you move on back, I've got it going into the pump, and then I've got the pump feeding from the stock washer fluid container. I actually tapped the bottom of it and installed the feed line under here. So if I pull this down, it'll come off. You've got the stock washer fluid, and you've got the feed line mounted to the bottom. Now the low level sensor I've got mounted up here, and I've got it set to come on whenever I got about a third of the tank left, which I've found on my other car is about right. It gives me enough to get home, and enough, you know, if anything goes wrong, it gives me some extra and enough warning to actually do it. So that way if I'm having fun, I'll notice it at some point. And that'll allow me to go fill it up and before I blow something up. I always keep a gallon with me. Even in that car I kept some with me just because you never know when you'll be out. And if you do run out, don't boost it while you're out of methanol. Very bad idea, especially once you're tuned for it. Now if you're just running pure water, then it's not a problem. It's just there as a safety factor. So then I've got the wiring run down along the frame rail up to my fuse box, which made installing it much easier. Inside here, I've actually got it designed to sit up under the dash in here, but while I'm tuning it, I've got it sitting here so I can actually adjust it. And then I've got the LED so I can know what's going on mounted right here. And it basically will blink and tell me whenever this kit's on, what pressure it's at, and if it goes low pressure as a short, whatever, it tells me all the stuff right here. And right next to my wideband. I've also got boost and vacuum. This is my oil temperature, oil pressure, transmission temperature, voltage, and all the basics you need whenever you have a truck with a supercharger. Actually, it's a little overkill, but that's how I am. So after I got installed, it was doing much better. I definitely picked up power on the stock pulley still, and it was a noticeable amount of power. Once it got tuned and it was running fine, I decided to try out this pulley. This is a 2.2 URD pulley for the supercharger. Now, before I installed the methanol at all, I was making about 5 to 5.5 psi. After installing it, my boost actually went up to about 5.5 to 6 psi, and I even hit 6.5 on occasion. So that was obviously just from the denser air charge. That just goes to show you how effectively it was working. So at that point, I decided to go ahead and install the smaller pulley. Now with the smaller pulley, my boost went from 6.5 psi to about 7 to 7.5 psi on average. I even hit 8 psi at one point. So it definitely gained about another, right what it said, about another pound to pound and a half of boost. And with that, it has picked up a very noticeable difference in power. I'd say I've gained total now with the water methanol kit tuned and the smaller pulley, at least 20 to 25 horsepower. So it was well worth the money. Not to mention it's safer on the truck. It's running much smoother under boost now. My EGTs are lower, and also my timing map is zeroed out. So I'm actually running stock timing now, even with the smaller pulley and more boost than I've ever run before. And I'm actually thinking about going with an even smaller pulley and gaining more power, maybe a 2.1, maybe even a 2.0 pulley. Not sure yet, I'll figure that out later. Right now it's plenty fast enough for what I need. If you want to see a video of showing how fast it is, I've got another one on my channel that shows burnouts and 0 to 60 times, etc. So you can see all that there. And otherwise, modification wise, that's most of the performance mods I've done. The headers, supercharger, pulley, water methanol kit, URD, 7th injector kit, wideband, and basic gauges for monitoring everything. And that's pretty much it. Oh, and an OBD2 reader so I can see what the actual stock ignition is doing and all the good stuff to actually tuning it. If you don't know how to tune it, get a tuner and they can do it for you, although tuning this piggyback is really, really easy compared to a standalone in most cars. So it's really not that hard to do. You just got to make sure your AFRs are in point and use the base map that URD gives you is very good. On one interesting tidbit, if any of y'all do get headers with the supercharger, you'll notice your boost actually drops once you get the headers installed. That's due to the higher efficiency of the engine will actually drop boost. But don't worry, you're probably still making more power with them installed, even at the lower boost pressure. But you can always get a smaller pulley and up that boost pressure again. For example, me, with this pulley, I should be making about 9 to 10 psi, but I'm only making about 7 to 8 psi because of the higher efficiency. Yet I'm still making as much or more power than the guys running 9 to 10 psi. So that just goes to show you how good those actually are. If I had to guess right now, I'd say the truck is right about 250 horsepower to the rear wheels, which through a 4-wheel drive chassis, that's not too bad, and it definitely gets up and goes. I mean, you can see on the other videos, it will more than get out of its own way. Fast? No. Quick? Heck yeah. Alright, I guess that's all for today. If y'all have any questions about it, feel free to post them in the comments below. I'll help you with anything I can. If you want more information on these trucks, two of the sites I like are customtacos.com and yodatech.com. Custom Tacos has more performance stuff. Yodatech is much better about everything else. And oh yeah, from the burnout I did yesterday, which is in another video, you'll want to see the rubber that's not on my tire anymore and is now all over my fender well. If you want to see how it got there, check out my other videos. This brings me to the last question I want to ask y'all. This video has obviously been much longer than most of my videos. Most of my videos are designed to fit into the attention span of a 5-year-old, since that's what most YouTube users are. No offense. There are about 3 of you that are over 5. Okay, I get the picture. But this is a longer video, and I want to see, what do y'all feel? Is it too long? Should it be shorter? What should be left out? What should be added? Give me input. I want to know how to make the best video for y'all, because I plan on doing many more of these in the future. Especially with my other car, it's about to go for big power. I'm hoping to make 700 horsepower with it. So I want to know, what do y'all think is better? Short video, longer video with more details? What details can I leave out? What can I leave in? Please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you want to, favorite the video and show it to your friends. Or go check out the burnout video and send that to your friends, because trust me, you'll like it. Now before I leave y'all, I'm going to show you what it sounds like, because obviously it's what you want to hear. So let's show you what it sounds like. Oh, and for those of you that are going to ask, it is on the stock exhaust right now. So, stock exhaust, the only thing I've done is remove the cat. Otherwise, totally stock exhaust.